All right, you guys, welcome back. This is Gabe, and this is our ATI teacher of the day. This is our first series on the Awakening the Illumined Heart interviews. And today with us is Ron. But Ron, please tell us your full name and how you say it properly.
Sure. Thank you very much, Gab. My name is Ron Serchie. Just keep it plain and simple, Ron. Everyone knows me as.
All right, beautiful. And so, Ron, where are you right now?
I'm located just north of Center City, Philadelphia, about 30 minutes. But primarily for the last 28 years, I was living in Center City, but we just moved into the woods.
All right, beautiful, Philly. And so, where are you originally from, Ron?
I'm originally from the Philadelphia area. My whole family. 3 generations back, my family's from Italy. We mentioned earlier, from Abruzzi. So I have Italian roots in me.
All right, beautiful. That keeps us close. I'm Italian too. And so, Ron, tell us a little bit about your former education. What did you study growing up?
Well, growing up, I was very athletic. I originally was going into physical therapy in that early stages. I also simultaneously with my schoolwork, I was working as a lifeguard and spa attendant at the Trump property. And from working in the spa, I was also around a lot of massage therapists there. But so part of my PT in the earlier years training, I had to take a massage course. And so I actually went to Philadelphia to Massage Arts and Science Center of Philadelphia and learned the massage and became a licensed massage therapist. And at a very early stage, I was very, very lucky working at the Trump properties. I was working on a lot of celebrities, and I'm only 20, 21 years old at the time. And so it was and I'm working on a lot of people from around the world that were coming in, staying at the properties. So I was learning a lot at that point about people's worldviews of, back in the day, we used to call alternative healing methods. We can't say that word today. We say holistic now, but back then it was all different alternative. And I also have an uncle who's a chiropractor. So I was mentioning to you before we were speaking now that my lineage, my great-grandfather and my grandfather were forensics scientists. So with the coming into the alternative mindset of healing, I was also a sifter, looking through and looking at many different things through many different angles outside the box, so to say, beyond the conventional
Standard academic perception of things.
Exactly. Yep. And again, I'm in my early 20s, so I'm full of energy. I'm full of, my eyes and ears and my sensors are wide open. I'm looking everywhere at all kinds of things. I did have an accident early off before I started all my training, and I was having issues actually going to the bathroom, and I didn't go to the bathroom for many weeks. And my uncle heard about this, the chiropractor. I went right to his office. He gave me an adjustment, and I went right to the bathroom.
Wow.
So that was at age 18, and that really was very fascinating to me, that conventional medicine couldn't figure out what was going on. I went and got an adjustment, and just like that, my bowels were flowing, and I thought that was really pretty cool.
Wow. Incredible. And so you were telling me about all your other certifications. You're also a Reiki master and practitioner.
Well, every 2 years, being a licensed massage therapist, this is my 30th year actually, laying my hands on people. And as you can see, I got a table behind me here. But I do work for a high-end place. But for every 2 years, we have to do continued ed. So every 2 years, I'm looking around to see, what I could train in. And it went from, hot stones to cupping to acupuncture to aromatherapy to, you name it. And so by 97 is when I decided, because of a coworker at that time, I had an injury with my hand, and being a massage therapist and having an injury with a hand is not like the best combo.
Mm.
And so it was affecting me emotionally and mentally too. But I had a coworker that said, hey, you got to do Reiki, 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 Reiki. You know, it's like, what the heck is Reiki? You know, if it's not cracking me, I'm not feeling it. It's not cups, nothing like that. You know, I took a little while for me to actually agree, but I went and I had my first Reiki session. I just remember laying on the table, and like 20 minutes later, I was literally astraling out of my body. And I saw the Reiki practitioner sitting there with her hands on me as I was moving up through her room at the time. And I start to go through the ceiling, and it freaked me out. I'll never forget it. I thought I was dying. I thought I was dying. I didn't know. I just saw my body and her, and it felt like I felt something, and I was like, oh my God, I'm dying. And then I slammed back in my body. I opened my eyes. I just was like, oh my God. I was excited, and she was just smiling. And so I went home that night, and I didn't realize in my train ride back home that I originally went there because my hand was hurting, that the pain in my hand had deeply subsided. And but I was so in with what happened to me.
Rose with the experience that
Yeah,
you
it was
forgot
like,
about it.
absolutely. So you just
Amazing.
gave me chills. So I called her up the next day and I said, when can I sign up for Reiki? And so I went to Reiki 1. It was an incredible experience. And then at that point, I start to really feel, don't forget, I was already about 7 years of laying my hands on people anyway.
Mhm.
So, and then my wife, but at the time she was my girlfriend, we've been together 26 years now. I immediately said, hey, you gotta, because she was starting to dab around with meditation also. And I said, hey, you gotta let me do some Reiki with you. Yeah. And shortly thereafter, she went right behind me. She trained in Reiki 1. We went to Reiki 2 together. And then that was in 97. And simultaneously, I swear, Reiki opened the garage door to metaphysics for me. Because
Oh yeah,
simultaneously,
you went from body to energy, fundamentally. It's like,
bingo, 100%. And simultaneously, I had a childhood friend at the time hand me Bob Frissell's book, Nothing in this book is true, but it's exactly the way it is, or something like that.
Mhm.
And I remember reading the book, and I'm seeing this Drunvalo Melchizedeck, flower of life, Merkaba. These are 3 words I've never heard before. And I was, you know, a good 5-6 years into training and studying and reading things. And I had my mother was a hippie. My mother was a true hippie from back in the 60s and 70s. And so I was very attuned and keen to crystals and things of this nature already. And having the uncle that was the chiropractor. So I was open, you know. And so I'm reading all this about this Drunvalo Melchizedeck character, and I'm like really enamored with what was being said in this book. And sacred geometry. So as soon as I got done reading this book, it was just like Barbara Brennan came in my life, Alex Gray came in my life, Dan Winter came in my life, and it just snowballed. And by 99, Drunvalo's Flower of Life book came out. And I think I was probably one of the first ones that bought the book in the local bookstore, because I knew it was in the process of being released. So I kept saying, you call me when you get that book here, you know? And so I read that book, and it just really connected the dots to a lot of things. One of them is, and I won't get too into this, but one of them is the secret government, the secret societies, the New World Order, right? That I kind of already knew because of my grandfather's work in the forensic fields. And I knew already about the secret societies behind the scene. I didn't know how deep they ran, or I didn't know anything about the bloodlines at that point. But anyway, the sacred geometry was fascinating, and the body mechanics, the energy and consciousness that way was fascinating. Simultaneously, what I forgot to mention is that around 97, I took some pure MDMA, which I already had experience with for about 6 years, dancing in the clubs, going out and doing ecstasy and dancing all night at raves and stuff in the city scene and things like that. And I, you know, there was a big group of us too in the city that were already kind of spiritually moving, and we're passing around Celestine prophecy, I think, right around 94, 95.
Yes.
And
yeah.
there was just, you know, there were a series of things that Waco was a big thing for me in 93. Nothing seemed right about that. And then in 95, I think it was, the Oklahoma bombing something didn't seem right to me about that either. So reading about the secret society stuff was like, okay, I see what's going on behind the scene. But but what happened was when I started training in Reiki and I took the pure MDMA, I started, and the MDMA threw you in your heart. I didn't understand this then because I was already taking it for years before, but I didn't have these experiences. But because I was opening up my channels with the Reiki and the energy work, I started then to go to the clubs and go to the parties and stuff and sit there in silence and literally watch people's auric fields. And I was mentioning to you before how the reason why I knew they were the auras, because it looked like the aurora borealises. You know, they identical to a T. They look like the northern lights. So the auric fields around people's bodies were mimicking what I saw at the aurora borealises. And it all depended on people's emotions and what state they were in at the time. Some people could see it was really blotchy. Other people were happy and their aurics were real big and bright. And I really, it was like I was getting a download. I understood feng shui immediately. I understood the placement of things and how energy was coming from it and through it. And I just spent hours and watching energy ripple out of my fingertips like water, you know, like in a divine pattern of ripple. And I would just, wow. And then like putting my fingers together, and your fingers are like very duck webby, you know, and seeing these little white beads run down the finger. And I would see, like, you know, from an atom you have the proton moving around the electron. I would literally see that in people's fields. I would see these things moving around people. It was just, and so it was like from 97 to 2001 when I finally attended my first Flower of Life workshop being held in Pennsylvania. It was the very first one ever being given in Pennsylvania. And I was very fortunate because the facilitator at the time was Livia Cherish, who was the editor of book 2. So I was like, hey, she must know the work. She edited the book. And so my wife, my girlfriend at the time, my wife now, she and I and one other of our close friends, we attended this workshop. And we got to meet a few other young individuals there, and everyone was calling us the Indigo Kids, you know, and there's an older crew there too. But we had an incredible time, and it was the week of 9/11. It was actually it was Thursday, Friday of that week. So 9/11 was like on a Monday.
Monday, yeah.
And so there was no planes in the air. Remember that eerie time, whatever, there was no flying in the sky or nothing like that. So it was kind of an eerie time, but the workshop was amazing. Like because it was all direct experiences. And she, you know, we'd talk about something, then we would do it. And we'd talk about something, and we'd do it. And that just really changed my life. It was, I just thought this was the most incredible thing in the world. And we had an amazing experience, my wife and I and our friend. And then it was shortly thereafter in 2002, or maybe later in that year, it was like within the year, that I desired and attended, and it was called the Seed of Life 1. And it was being held by Ron and Lisa Holt, who were the president of the Flower Life at the time. And that was being held in Tenali, Mexico. So my one friend and I decided to go, and we had a wonderful time. It was basically, you know, you had learned the Merkaba in the Flower of Life, but then it was like, what do you do with this?
Right.
And
that is one of the questions I'm going to ask you soon.
Okay. And so basically in that particular workshop, it was all about the ego and learning to deal with the ego. As you're raising your frequencies, a lot of this turmoil and things are going to surface. And we used to call it the shit hitting the fan. Like, get ready, you start activating
What
your
it is
fields,
at times. So
right?
It sure is.
So we had a lot of experiences of people with the shit hitting the fan, and how are we going to deal with the ego and things of this nature. And it was a beautiful week I spent up in Mexico with this training. And while I was there, don't forget, I was already having my own experiences before all the Drunvalo stuff. And they had approached me, Ron and Lisa and a few of the other facilitators, and said, hey, have you ever considered being a facilitator? I said, nope. I was terrified to talk in front of a group, you know, that me at that state at that time. And with some consideration of thought afterwards, I was like, you know, I think this work is really changing people. And for me as a massage therapist, I'm only working on one person at a time, you know. My mindset at the time was, oh wow, I could really help out a group of people here
Rather
and
than one at a
empower.
time.
And yeah, and the whole thing to me about this work is about empowering yourself, needing nothing outside yourself. Those key words were big for me because again, I was already having experiences and I saw Great Spirit moving through all things, you know, and I was having all kinds of things that you and I talked about earlier, but it was quite incredible for me the way the Creator was rolling itself out and presenting itself to me, or my higher self working alongside the Great Spirit and snowballing all these things and experiences with me.
That's amazing. So
So
you're basically
yeah,
one of the oldest teachers. You've been around from the Flower of Lifetimes, and then you went into the ATIH material, right?
that's correct. Yes, I had taught 48 Flower of Life workshops up until the time of ATIH, and
Wow.
today I've facilitated 41 ATIH workshops. The last 2 years have been slow because of situations, but I'm actually getting back on the saddle. May 20th, I got a workshop that I'm doing in the Poconos, about an hour and a half away, and it's a pretty good, strong group. I'm very excited. It's mostly all women, so I'm very excited because they're excited. And when you get people who are excited about the work, it kind of makes it easier to deep dive. You know, you kind of get rid of the superficial stuff and just dive in there and just get into the heart.
They're great. They're great listeners, the ones that are excited usually.
Yeah,
Ron, I want to, just like I was telling you before, the very fundamental core purpose for this series of interviews is literally speaking about experience. And that is where true seekers find their moment of aha or their moments of growth. And the next phase, I mean, like there's no growing without actual experience, recognition that you had an experience, and then being able to articulate that experience. If none
yeah,
of these three are in place, you can see God in the face, and it could be anyone. And if you don't recognize it's God, again, it could be whatever. And if you cannot talk about it, if you cannot describe that, of course, the understanding of the experience is very, very limited, along with the recognition. And so I don't have the arrogance to want to teach people all of these three phases, but I think it's fundamental that people are aware that these are three elements of mental processing that are necessary in what we can call a spiritual journey or a personal development journey. And when we talked before, I really, really enjoyed hearing you speak about your personal experience of what you were seeing with your hands and what you were seeing with people's auras, and how you described it, because that demonstrates a lot of maturity. If you can see something and not recognizing and not being able to talk about it, then it's as if you never experienced it. And that is why I appreciate asking questions to senior teachers and senior facilitators, because you guys, that's your job. You speak about your own experience. And if you can't talk about your own experience, there's no, there's people feel that there's very limited authenticity. It's like being in class. Someone talks about maths and then you do it, right? But is the teacher able to actually do the math they're teaching you? They have to, otherwise they're not you're not going to learn anything. And so you already answered my first question, but I interrupted you unfortunately. And please tell us how you met Drunvalo and how the process moved from the Flower of Life into the ATIH.
well, so right away, so in 99, when I was reading the books, I couldn't quite get the process, and so I was very fortunate that in 2001 the workshop came to the area. once I was with a physical facilitator translating the process, it all clicked.
There were
It was
videos before, right?
well, I'll tell you, I didn't get my hands on those videos until right after that workshop, because there was I called her my spiritual grandmother. Her name was Noku Kanye. She happened to attend that workshop. She was a beautiful woman, a Black woman. She was like in her 60s maybe at that time. You know, she's no longer with us today, but she was so funny. Like, she really ruffled the feathers of Olivia at the time. And but it was just, it was very innocent. You know, she would be sitting in a chair and leaning back, and she'd fall over and fart. You know, it's like you're in this intense workshop, but you had this person, and throughout the week, like, there was this constant things like, I got to get my tape recorder, you know, and she would go and hold up the class and changing the tape and stuff, you know. But I fell in love with her. I fell in love, and I found out she lived like 20 blocks from us in Center City. So immediately we bonded. And when I went to her house, she had a library of spiritual stuff like you didn't know, but she had the 14 tapes. So she would give me one tape at a time so I could take it and record it. And I would have to bring it back. I'm done with this tape. She wouldn't give me all, or she wouldn't give me like 4 or 5. She'd give me one at a time, because she told me that many people before never returned the tapes, you know. And so I love that, really, because she made me have to watch tapes. I watched them 6 or 7 times before I gave them back anyway, because I was so enamored with. And I discovered in watching these tapes too, by the way, that the book I read by Bob Frissell in '97, he plagiarized word from word from those tapes and wrote those books. And but Drew was okay with that, you know, because again, he's drawing, like, I wouldn't have known about Drew probably until a little later or something if it wasn't for that book anyway, you know. But I always
actually, they changed, forgive me, I'm opening a bracket here. They changed the plagiarism laws, I think in 2005, where it's not plagiarism but quoting. So you can take up to, like, I don't know, 20% or 25% of someone's book or someone's paper. I think they lowered it. I don't know if it's around, you know, a certain amount. And if he was quoting, it's acceptable. If it's like long pages and then putting in there and without recognizing the author, then yeah, there's hardcore plagiarism there.
No, this was word from word, even the little side stories in the videos that he was writing. And I asked him about it years later when I met Bob. I said, couldn't you change like some of the words? But that didn't matter, because everyone loved Bob anyway, and Drunvalo was okay with that anyway. But I just thought it was funny as I'm watching these videos. I'm like, he's saying that.
Heard it before.
Verbatim, like word, like you couldn't have changed 3 words. Anyway, but that's just Drunvalo, you know. He's got such a big heart that way, that, you know. And again, Bob's work drew a lot of people there anyway. So again, I had great experiences in the earlier stages with the Flower of Life. I was having really good direct experiences with my own Merkaba field. I had, before my wife now and girlfriend at the time, before we moved together, I was living in a studio by myself. And on the 3rd floor, I had built a pyramid, a 72-degree pyramid that the Russians work with. And they're talking 2003, I believe, at the time. And I had lined it up with copper and stuff. And I got in a mind's eye, one of the magic eye puzzles, and I had put that on my wall, and I would sit naked with like Tom Kenyon music and staring at this thing, and I'd be seeing like orbs flying around and stuff. You know, it was all natural. You know, it was all. The thing about doing the MDMA and ayahuasca also, we didn't talk much about that so much, but doing those only allowed me to know that things existed. I didn't need those things. I knew I didn't need them. But when I had the experiences with them, it was like in such detailed color that it like ingrained in my mind. And it was like, I know for a fact that prana is everywhere, just like the air. And so it made it easy and for me to have my own experiences, especially with the Merkaba field. And right away, like the stages, the first 6 breaths, remember, I'm a Reiki guy. So I'm used to doing Reiki with somebody for an hour to clear them out. Every chakra sitting there, you know, and really being in love with that person. And you know, within 3 minutes, you're clearing out your chakras. I could feel it. And I was like, wow, this is really powerful. And then when we got into the 7th breath and it, you know, everything coalesced down here at the navel, is like, I could feel that down there in the Don Hawk, or however you went, the energy center, you know, and I could really feel that ball building there. And so the whole process, like I was really experiencing and feeling it to the point where it's like I felt good facilitating these classes.
Right.
So in 2005, I met Drunvalo for the first time. Finally, it was in Maryland, and we were at a hotel in Maryland, and he was just I think he was like maybe 6 years into teaching the Earth Sky Heart.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Which
couldn't
doesn't
wait.
exist anymore.
Right.
It was transitioned into the ATIH, right?
Correct. Well, when it went from Earth Sky Heart to Living in the Heart, and then into ATIH, so to say. But I had friends that went in 2003 in Connecticut, and they met Drew, and I missed that trip, and I was very upset with myself. So I always promised if Drew came to the East Coast again, I would never miss it. So he came in 5 and had a great experience there with Earth Sky Heart, and got to talk with him a little bit briefly. You know, I was always one of those who I don't really desire Drunvalo's attention. I could tell there's a lot of other people who I was having so much incredible experiences with, a lot of the participants, that I've always liked talking to them. And I was, at the time, I'm still one of the younger people, you know, who involved with these things. In 2007, Drunvalo came back to the East Coast, to the University of Maryland. And at this time, there was some turmoil going on with the Flower of Life. And so I needed to talk to him. You know, I needed to understand from his mouth what was happening. And so we had a really incredible experience there. There was a woman there in 2007 who had a lot of entities in her. And she could not, throughout the whole first day, like kept getting Drunvalo's attention, saying, I can't activate my fields. I'm having a hard time with the Merkaba. So a group of facilitators, myself included, like 3 or 4 of us, went off to the side with her for like an hour, trying to just walk her through this process. And I got so frustrated, I had to get up and leave. And there was other teachers that stayed there a little longer. Anyway, day 2, we had the laying on the table at the oming. And we were in pods of 8, and there was like 111 of us in that room. That's a big group, a lot of energy. And she just so happened to be in the group next to me, and the table next to my table. And the group that I was with was all my friends that had all gone to my workshop. So we were all on the same page together, you know. And I think I had Tachyon with me and stuff on our table and everything. So I was like, no, when it was the time for this woman, she was on the table and everyone's chanting, she starts speaking in tongue. Well, my whole group, at least all of us sitting.
Everybody went like, what's going on?
Went like, yeah, we exactly were all like, what's going on? And Drew immediately came over, and when he came over, it got worse. And she was basically like, she's mine, get the fuck off, you know. It's like, it was like Exorcist, you know. I was like, wow. I was like, I've never saw this to that extent like that. What I didn't tell you is I'd done some studies with Ken Page, Drunvalo's nephew, a few years prior to this. It was of ET extractions and stuff, entity extractions. And so I had a little bit of forehand knowledge of what was going on, but to watch Drew do it was very fascinating. And he just started pulling out these various beings, you know. And at one stage, it got really, at one part, the people that were sitting around the lady were all crying because they couldn't contain her, and they're holding her. And it was intense. It really was intense. And it was a fascinating experience for me to be able to witness. But afterwards, she calmed down. She said the next day that she was able for the first time that night to get into meditation and activate her fields. She the next day, she was just a completely different woman. You know, you saw the shift. And that was wonderful for me to see as a facilitator. And then afterwards, we had it later that night. We had that same day of the healing. We had a separate meeting with just the teachers, the FOL teachers, because there was turmoil going on. Drunvalo wanted to talk to us separately, and we all got together. It was funny because we all sat in this room, and somebody was like, yeah. So talk about that lady. Like, let's put this stuff aside.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later. But the lady,
right? So about the lady, and what the hell? And that was phenomenal. You know, I'm not going to say exactly what Drew said. It's in the public, but Drunvalo said that he had assistance by a specific being that really upset a lot of people. And to me, it made all sense in the world. I guess I'll say it. It's out in the public anyway. But Drew had said that he had brought Lucifer in because the being that was causing all the problem, he was able to extract a lot of the other beings that were no issues. But there was like a soldier being that when they saw Drew and Michael there, he freaked out and like went into war mode. So Drew brought Lucifer in.
I want to open a little bracket for those of you that are listening to this content. You can find the Earth Sky. Forgive me. What was the name of the training? Earth Sky
Heart.
Earth Sky Heart 5-day training on Gaia. We're not here to advertise Gaia. For those of you that are interested, you can see all of this content in there. And I believe you're referring to that lady. If you're not, there was a very similar case of a lady with a very stubborn entity within her.
It's that one.
It was that one, right?
It was that one, yeah. I happened to be there. I was very fortunate to be there. Yeah. And so when Lucifer came in, this entity saw him and was like, "Yes, sir," and like left immediately. Okay. And I thought that was fascinating, you know, because we have a misconception about a lot of the things that are going on. And Drunvalo has his own story with Lucifer that's in the public and really breaks it down about how basically Drew was confronted by Lucifer, and Lucifer was like, "Why are you here?" And Drunvalo basically told him why his mission was, and that everyone on the earth was going to make it. He was here for everyone. And so the being known as Lucifer said, "If that's true, I will leave you alone," you know. And so I felt like that was a very fascinating story, and I saw it happen. So I don't know if the Lucifer thing is exactly true, that that's what happened, but I saw the transition of something took place. It got worse, and then it was like, bam, you know, so something within there, and I have to believe my teacher. So yeah, that was amazing. And so then 2010 I started, well, Drunvalo had told us that there was going to be a big shift and that we were going to go into the heart. So I basically continued to teach Flower of Life, but I would only teach it up to a certain point, up until the 14th breath, because I knew we were going to stop mentally activating these fields. And I have to tell you, I got a lot of, I had some pushback by certain people who were on the upper echelon at the time to even allow me to participate in the ATIH training. And even though I was one of the older, I already had 41 workshops under my belt, and I had a very good rapport with a lot of the participants that were coming in. And a lot of, I don't know how many to date, but I think maybe over 10 or so participants became teachers. So I'm doing something correct, you know, but they made it hard for me I had to jump through a lot of hoops and do different things in order for me to even show up to ATIH. But, you know, so anyway, I got there, and I told you before that I was having problems getting into my heart. I was not having a heart experience for 6 years up until ATIH training. And I mentioned to you before, I was very fortunate that I got to stay with a young man who was a local and well-known local in the area, Robert Dakota. And he had actually come to my house prior to me going out there. So we had known each other already. And so during the training during the day, I was doing the ATIH work, but in the evening, I was being taken to places locally with Robert, going out to the ruins of the Anasazis and sitting in kivas with the local who was the keeper of the land there and sharing pipe with him. And then I mentioned to you that Robert had just videoed Dr. Emoto. So Dr. Emoto, this was in Japan. So Dr. Emoto said one of the best things you could do is ceremony with water. So we went, Robert and I got permission to enter this property where this water was coming up out of the ground. And it was a property that was for healing women, battered and abused women. So we had to get special permission to even step foot on the property. And we did. And it was shocking that we did, actually. That was a big emotional thing. And then when we were brought to this very specific place where the water was coming out, no lie, it looked like a woman's vagina, this V-like area that we were. And I remember we were taking pictures, we were saturated with orbs everywhere. And it was during the day, you know. And so it was very emotional. We got the water. And then like later in the week, we did a ceremony with the entire ATIH staff and stuff. And Drunvalo was there. And so I was like doing 2 workshops at a time. I was exhausted. I was emotionally a wreck. I was the lead of my group, you know, so I was concerned with making sure everyone was okay. There was some friction going on there too with things, and you know, but it was something that I had to deal with individually. But I had made, you know, with myself, I had made an agreement that if I was not going to get this process, then I was not going to go home and teach this work. And it was on the last day where I decided to go into the room by myself, into the big room we were all in. Everyone was at lunch, put my mask on, and I started to lead myself through the process. Up until when the whole group came back in the room, I was already like very close there. And then Drew got on the microphone and continued to lead us. So he finally caught up to where I was. I was just sitting there waiting for the next steps, you know, to move to the tiny space, you know, or no, I'm sorry, to go behind the heart and go into the heart is what it was. I was just sitting there. And when he said that, I got right in. And at that point, I was able to go to the tiny, everything became really simple at that point. I was so ecstatic. That was the other thing. I was like, oh my God. Like I was feeling the whole process. I was like, oh my God, this is the furthest I've ever been. It was first, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And it's like, you don't want to get in that state because you're going to lose it. You're going to, you know, you're in a special state right now. You know, I don't, you know, it's like when you see something, you go to look and you lose it. It's like, you know, so yeah, it all was divine. When Drew said to activate the Merkaba, I felt a brightening. I just felt a brightening of what I had already been there. And I immediately started to flood and cry. I knew I had finally done it. You know, I finally did this. I finally got in here. I finally activated these fields. And I didn't move. I just wanted to stay there forever. I remember everyone coming out of it and stuff like that and telling their stories. And I'm still sitting back there in there going, damn it, I got to come out of this right now, you know? So yeah, that was it. That was, and then unfortunately, when I got home I literally crawled in my front door. I couldn't wait to see my wife at the time. I was exhausted. I was just beyond spent. And I couldn't wait for her to tell her about everything. But they didn't accept me right away. I didn't pass right away, believe it or not. I had probably most experience. I shouldn't say it like that. I had a lot of experience in a lot of people that were in that room. I knew the Flower of Life material by the back of my hand. I knew the Merkaba and all the workings of it very well. But I didn't pass right away. They made me jump through some more hoops, which was fine because I love Drew and I love the work, and I'll keep jumping through these hoops and nobody's going to stop me. And I had a lot of support at home, and I had a lot of support in my community at home, and everyone knew who I was. And I continued and I did that. I did what they desired me to do, jump through the hoop, and I started teaching right away, ATIH. And I think I trained maybe at least a half dozen facilitators, you know, that became other teachers. And yeah, everything has really been wonderful for the most part. There's been unfortunate strife within the organization itself. But you know, what organization out there doesn't have problems at times, you
I
know?
mean,
And
that's the history of human nature. You
exactly.
know, it's like from Christianity to any other religion to any. I mean, like it's just when institutionalization comes in, money, greed, and corruption, blah blah blah. We know the
Yeah.
story.
Well, I'll tell you what it is for me. It's like the bright light of this work just attracts things, you know. And I mentioned it to you earlier that one of the things I can say about Drunvalo and his work is that it has attracted some of the most incredible people in my life. Just that alone, I am beyond grateful, you know, honestly. And I'm still very deep friends with so many people from so many years, you know. And so that alone says something about the man and his work. And so, you know, I'm here today. I still love the work. I have a workshop coming up in May 20th in the Poconos in Pennsylvania.
Nice.
And I haven't taught a workshop in a little over a year and a half now. So I'm really looking forward to getting back up in the saddle and brushing off the cobwebs and getting back in and working with people again. It's something I love to do.
Yeah, I mean, with the current times, I know every state and every city has a different requirements with the pandemic, but I can hear what you're saying. Of refresher may be needed. But let me. I mean, first of all, I just want to thank you because I really enjoy your personal experience and so much history on your shoulders. And let me dig a little deeper and ask you how you've used both, you know, the Merkaba and the tiny space of the heart in your daily life. And if you can share a direct experience where shit hit the fans and you were like, okay, I gotta use the teachings or the tiny space of the heart or the Merkaba.
Sure. Yeah, that's pretty easy. Again, I was already in training with other energetic modalities prior to the Flower of Life and the ATIH. So when I first began experiencing directly Merkaba, I felt first of all and saw the value of it. Um, you know, they talk about the black helicopters and things of this nature in the first books. And I was having some issues in Center City. I was definitely being tracked. I was definitely being followed. There's documentation there. I actually even had complaints. I went to the police department, things. I could feel my phone tapping. I know what phone tapping is from the family I come from. I had a lot of phone tapping. But in 2000 I guess it was in 5, the first time I met Drew physically. And we talked about programming. And I knew it was in the book and things. And I trained in it and stuff.
Programming the Merkaba, you mean?
Programming Merkaba. He was like, just make yourself invisible. And I was like, oh, okay.
Sure.
Yeah.
Duh.
So I did that. And I slowly began to feel like a liftment of things were moving away from me. I also, at that point, 2003, 5, 7, I'm gaining a group of friends too in the city. So we have a network now. We had a strong network going in Center City. And so I felt like there was a lot of tension taken off of me a little bit. But I believed in the programming. I was a big fan before Drunvalo. I was a big fan of Katrina Raphael, who was, I referred to her as the crystal woman, the crystal lady.
Did she write any book? Can we give any reference to our audience?
Yeah, she's Katrina Raphael, and she's written many books on crystals.
Okay.
And how to program crystals. And so Drunvalo's method was pretty much identical to that to me. And actually, I think he even mentions her at some point. And so just with intention, putting in the program and holding that program, I believed in that. And I felt like me doing that, things were working well, more in harmony for me in my life. And yeah, I mean, life was pretty smooth from 2002 up until ATIH, really. I mean, I just loved the work. I loved everything, you know. The turmoil that was going on within the organization and stuff was very frustrating, because at one moment we're moving along very smoothly, and next minute things are being said and done, and it scattered up everything, and people went this way and that way, and that hurt my heart. You know, I didn't understand a lot of it, you know. And then and then again it happened again, and it just so happened that same people happened to be there again, that some of this stuff was happening. So, you know, I just, at this point, to me, I didn't really have Drunvalo's ear, you know, to sit down with him and give him my perspective from where I was coming from. I decided to just focus on the work and let everything be the way that it was going to be, you know. And and which I did, you know. And I still do to this day. I don't, you know, I love all the fellow facilitators. I'm saddened that there were about 300 and another two. There's probably around upwards of 500 teachers that were trained by Drew, whether it was Flower of Life or ATIH. You wouldn't know that today. There's maybe,
I didn't. In fact,
yeah,
I'm getting in touch with a number of around 75, which are publicly available on the School of Remembering and the Remembering the Heart website.
correct. That's right. And I happen to be on all those. And but it does hurt my heart to know that we have an incredible
Network.
we have and they're warriors. They're heart warriors. They've been around. They've done their things, you know, but they don't have the voice. And that was one of my biggest issues, because for me, the organization should have been, I've voiced this at Gaia, you know, I've voiced this publicly many times. This should be running like the cells in our body. You have trillions of different cells, heart, skin, liver, kidney, I don't care. There are trillions of different cells. They're not doing what they're doing for the body because the government is telling them what to do.
Right.
They're doing what they're doing because they love the body. That's unity consciousness. And Drew said that in one of the tapes back in the day in the early 90s, and it always stuck with me, and I always believed that. And I don't know why we get these power struggles, and we always end up with a male on top too. Like, aren't we in the female? Where's the female? You know? And I had I voiced that a lot too. And but at any rate, the work speaks for itself. There's a lot of facilitators out there, I believe, that believe in the work, but have gotten so distraught with the organizational stuff that they just had to let it go, you know.
Yeah, institutional challenges always come and go. We just, I mean, I think your approach is what probably most of the others was. You know, I just do my work. This is how it is, and that's the universe manifesting itself, and so on. But let's go back to your personal experience. You were telling me about how you started going into the heart, and how it changed your perception, and how smoother it became to activate the rods and have the experiences of the light.
Sure. I'm sorry I deviated off there a little bit. The experiences they're hard to, so you said the three things, right? The experience, right? Recognition
and
then
articulation.
So that one was always the toughest one for me. The articulation of what was going on, because so oftentimes it's so magnificent. And you know, like I remember when I first started having the experiences while I was in my heart, and having these experiences of not being where I'm sitting, like being literally somewhere else, like physically, and but knowing enough to not question it, because it would pull me right out of it, to just be. And I began to get stronger with just being while I was in my heart. Where in the earlier stages with the mental Merkaba, I would have an experience and immediately like, what was that? And I'd pull myself right out of it, you know. And that would happen a million times. And so it made the articulation of things so much harder. But being in the heart process for me, the articulation process became a lot easier, because I'm still and stable, and I'm not going anywhere, and I don't plan to go anywhere. So whatever you wanted to reveal to me at this moment, so be it. And I learned to uh,
Surrender.
recalibrate. Huh?
Can we say surrender?
Yeah, absolutely. Great word. Yep. I learned to surrender, but in the surrendering process, I wanted to reprogram, because I had years of program my Merkaba. Now, to be honest with you, I was never a fan of a lot of programs, because I always felt like you had to remember your program. So I always had a little card, and I always had like maybe 5 programs in my Merkaba. Keep me invisible, health, shield my house, just simple programs.
What else? What are the other two? You said
Um,
5.
well, they changed in the earlier years. It was always a lot of times it was travel. It was like I was programming my travel experience, a bubble of safety in the travel process, actually seeing myself at the other end of the travel, not necessarily worrying about the process of getting there, but being protected and being there already. I kept it simple. I really did in the earlier years. But with my heart, things changed. The programming changed. I went into more like a fractal mode. Whereas for instance, when we recently just moved where we are now, we've been here a year in the woods. When we moved here, we made a crystal grid. I took the flower of life pattern, I put it around the yard, around the house and stuff, and I nodal pointed with crystals a grid, got into the center of the grid, which is in my house, and got into the process. I usually have a pyramid set up right here, actually. I took it down because I have some plants that I brought in for the winter. But when I got into my heart to program the Merkaba, things are much more vivid, and the programming seemed to fractal. It was very odd for me. It felt right. It felt
Can you
okay.
define fractal as in like um, fragmented, or like it goes bigger from the okay.
Correct.
So like a
So
fractal, it has one shape and then it expands from there.
a circle within a circle within a circle within a circle within a circle.
Okay.
So I saw my protective Merkaba field around my house fractal itself beyond my house, beyond my being, and beyond my house. And that was new for me. I've always known about fractals. I'm a big fan,
So the
but
heart exponentialized basically your programming.
it did. It did. Without me even, it just happened. And it felt right. It felt harmonic. I didn't fight it, and I was enamored. I was, wow, that was like, wow, that was huge. But then I'm like, we're all fractaling each other. It was, it's like you're having these moments, like, realizations, So it was subtle things of this nature, because I was already experiencing my light body for a period of time anyway. But it did feel like it felt nice to not have to connect to my light body as frequent as I did in the earlier years. Where in the earlier years, it was almost every day, which I didn't mind because I was really into it anyway. I was in
But it was for your work. It was like,
it was still something. It's like, oh, I gotta. There's some, there'd be days where I would say, oh, I gotta do this, and
now it's more spontaneous. Fundamentally, it's just natural going in there.
now it's like, to be honest with you, it's like a desire. It's a yearning. Uh, it's a desire, it's almost like foreplay. There's just something there that feels so good. I have no problem sitting still in the dark for multiple hours in lotus position. I have no problems with that. I love it. I feel so good to feel the prana move through my being and clear my mind and lighten my heart, and it's wonderful.
Yeah,
It's just a
I know
wonderful.
that feeling very well. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. especially with there's something that clicks in within the body, even the spine. I've noticed in the last decade, there's a click. I've always had a little bit of back pain and neck pain. You know, after an hour, you just need to move. The body's not designed to just stay straight, just like that. Maybe it is, but I haven't experienced it long term. But there's a moment when, you know, there's like a little click I've noticed between my hips and my back when they sink into that. I can sit for hours and no problem. And it's like it aligns the whole system when it connects, when there's coherence between mind and heart. All the rest kind of sinks into the system. If the heart is here or there and the mind is doing this, they just need to sit one on top of the other. And then it's like pure space of peace. It's amazing.
Yep.
It's really
amazing. That's exactly it. You took the words out of my mouth. That's exactly it. There's just this moment, you know. I think also, again, as I was telling you before, I came in the back door with some of the experiences with ayahuasca and MDMA, and they also trained me that that things exist. So you got to give it some time, you know. And I always feel like there's a 12 to 20 minute threshold. This threshold, like after 20 minutes, things like the magic happens.
Right.
And it's true in Reiki too. And when I train people in Reiki, it's like it kind of takes the body and the mind and things to sync up about 20 minutes. After that 20 minutes, the magic starts to happen.
Agreed. Absolutely. Thanks for that, man. Let's jump on another question, which is very much related, and it's have you witnessed? I know the answer, but can you tell us of your shift of perception? How you've noticed that there was a spike in extrasensory perceptions, how the body experiences, well, maybe not telekinesis, but like telepathy, all the whole plethora of what they're called cities or extrasensory perceptions, higher abilities that have kind of had an increase or a spike or an improvement from the time of the trainings and the workshops.
Well, to be honest, mine has been a slow unfoldment that continues on. It was never like that. It started with the Reiki in '97 and then continued with the first Flower of Life workshop in 2001 and just continues to snowball on. I have to be honest, and back to the programming and stuff like that, I have found myself that I had to be extremely careful about what I really desire. Because things come and they come fast, and if you're not in proper adjustment to that, it's like you want to go swimming, but it's dead winter, and next thing you're sitting in a pool. It's like, no, I'm not ready to go now. It's like like things happen so fast, you know. And I found that I had to be very precise, and I often desire nothing except for just protection of my family and health for myself, you know, which is enough for me. So
a lot of your colleagues explained the subject of the mind and the Merkaba and as a reality of duality, because as soon as you desire one thing, the very opposite, you know, you desire plus, but you know, with plus comes minus. It's just the nature of the physics we live in. It's causality. So you desire one thing, there's a byproduct to it. There's an effect. And so, yeah, I totally hear what you're talking about.
Yeah. And so with the heart, though, you're not getting that duality. You know, you're only getting a unified situation, but that unified situation can be overwhelming with emotions too. And you know, you could desire. You know, I mentioned to you earlier that I haven't. My oldest daughter has cerebral palsy, and oftentimes in my meditation, I will, in my tiny space, I will ask, you know, help with a certain situation, and sure enough, within 24 hours, 48 hours, it's like, oh my God, we just found a new piano player, you know. And it's like, there's a lot of emotion there. It's like it's almost hard to believe, that the creator responds in such a rapid way, and I believe the creator is constantly responding. We're just not getting that third one, that articulation clear often, and we're missing so many things, which I've had, so many stories. And it was like after the fifth time, it's like, oh, okay.
Got it now.
Okay, smack, and I just I live in a very dense place on a planet with Philadelphia, New York, and DC. And it's in my conviction of this work of the heart, which has allowed me, I believe, to function here as well as I have, and not really have the turmoil that I see going on around me, and have a lot of clarity. And not only that, but be on the right side of history, even though when I voiced my opinion about certain things 4 or 5 years ago, I had a lot of people chastising me. But now it's starting to, I think a lot of people are starting to see, and it's like, how did you know that then? Well, I didn't really know that then. It was the feeling and senses I was getting while I was in my heart. Like, do we really want to continue putting the same people in control that have been here for decades and decades and decades and decades and decades, or maybe try somebody else?
Right.
Regardless of what the media has to say, because we know they've never been honest in decades and decades and decades.
Yeah.
So, for me, I was able to sit in a very opposite city. It was very blue. Well, I'm not into politics much, but it was a very blue place where I'm feeling red. And I, I'm very fortunate that I stayed in my conviction of my heart, because today I have so many people around me now who are like, wow, you were saying this 4 years ago, and it's all out now, and it's not me, it's what Great Spirit had helped me and many others who were on that same plane I was hold the line, because that's what we're doing. We're holding the line right now, and we're holding a line and giving a voice to children right now, and that needs to be understood too. And so this heart work has allowed me to go into the depths of things, dealing with such darkness.
Right. Sorry, I have a little technical challenge here. Okay, I'm good. Yeah, I hear you. We live in a very tight space, I would say, right now, and things are extremely polarized. I mean, the whole globe right now, it's at house arrests, right? And this is a subject that I specifically don't think should be in these interviews, and I don't want to really talk about it because it's very, I've lost a lot of friends over it and talking about it. I have a lot of doctor friends and PhDs, and I stopped talking about the pandemic and COVID and everything else simply because it's black or white. You're either do this or that. There's no plethora of options. There's no openness of mind. There's no discussion. It's either it's this or you're wrong. You're a Novax. You're a Nazi. You're a crazy, stupid head. You're ignorant. And so I think it has come the time for people to think with their own head. Problem is, a lot of people love to be told what to say. They want to be fed. They want to be hearing what they should do, what they should be thinking, how they should be feeling. And that is where, all of this kind of training comes, because, yes, it takes a big effort of self-discrimination, or maybe not discrimination, but the discernment, the capacity to understand what is good for you rather than what is pleasurable, or what you're programmed to think or believe. But that really goes beyond the scope. I mean, that is an individual effort, because otherwise you're like everyone has to do that part of the job on their own, because otherwise they fall into, again, the pattern of, okay, tell me what to do, tell me how to think, tell me what's the right way. I can't get it on my own. And that is where the power of the ATIH lands. It gives you the coherence of heart and mind necessary to think on your own and make decisions on your own with the help of, I would call it, supreme consciousness, or a form of consciousness that includes all possibilities, not just the ones that are good for you, but also for the rest of the planet and the rest of humanity. And that's why I'm enjoying the process of interviewing you guys so much. You're such a special bunch of people. I swear to God, I spoke with 15 of you already, and I have another 70 to go. And it's so exciting to speak with people that have a coherent heart and mind connection. People that know what they're talking about and they speak of their own experience. It's really fascinating.
No, I'll just say there, icing on the cake of what you were talking about. I'm in total agreement with what you're saying. And I just want to add this, again, if everything is just light, why do you need things like a mask or a vaccination? And so that's where I stand in all this. I don't understand the fear process of it, so.
Yeah, it's you have a great point, but that going down that conversation is a little bit of a Pandora box right now, and it's one that is going on for a year and a half, and it will keep going on. I'd rather have you tell us more anecdotes and experiences of your life. and so in that light, how some of your students have experienced the Merkaba, and how this for those that approach the spiritual path or self-development path, there are three major challenges: health, wealth, money, and relationships. These are the three little variables that creates the equation of happiness for a lot of people, until they have them all in place, and then they start realizing that there's more in life. So let me ask you how it was for you, but also for your students. How did they use the teachings and the ATIH workshop to take care of relationship and money and health? I bet health is a big one, because that's your direct work as well.
It's been incredible to watch. So 89 workshops to date. I got my 90th coming up in May, like I mentioned. I've got to see some fascinating things. I've seen couples come into workshops and get divorced right after. I've seen people come into workshops and come together and become couples. I always felt that was fascinating, because the work, it's the thing about the Drunvalo's workshops is that it's all direct experience. Flower of Life before ATIH. And unfortunately, right now, sitting on the shelf is also another level called Cosmic Grace.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that. Did you take it?
Yes, I did. And my wife and I, Cosmic Grace has to do with a lot of sexual energy. So my wife and I we've had to date, we've had at least 3 experiences that are out of this world. Like it's hard to articulate. All I know is we're doing certain patterns and motions and breathings, and next thing I know, I'm seeing the universe, completely forgetting that I'm having intercourse with my wife. And but the energy, so for me, Drunvalo, with the mapping of human consciousness in the light body, really helped, because I knew before Drunvalo, I knew that chi, prana, existed, the 5th element. I know that existed. And in fact, I teach a separate workshop that's geared on just the 5 elements. And because people don't know about prana, and they don't, first of all, people don't experience the 4 elements the way they should: air, water, earth, and fire. We disrespect them, right? We pollute them. We don't look at them in the value and level that we should with our health. And then you add in the 5th element, the most sacred of all, prana, or the ethers, which is found in all the others, by the way, too. Once you add that 5th one, first of all, you got to respect the other 4 to a certain level, of respect. And then once you learn about the fifth and add that in, your life changes just from that alone. So then once you learn about the fifth element and learning how to move prana throughout the light body, that's taking you to a whole new level. And if it's governed by the heart, you are really in another place. And it's hard to talk about. It really is, because it's such a beautiful, divine, emotional experience. And I really know, I believe that humanity is moving there. And I believe that once we understand certain levels about ourselves, knowing about the light body, we're going to change. And you mentioned it earlier, like, could you imagine getting teams of people and meditating in the heart? Like, we will send ripples out there. And we've talked about this, and we used to do things, you know, it was sad. We were having, Drunvalo was having Q&As like every other month and stuff. Things were moving, and then again, it was like you hit this other wall again, and it fragmented the school. Right, exactly. Yep. So it's still there. The teachers are all there. I'm believing it. I have dreams, and I believe that we're all going to merge back together again to help, because I believe something really big is about to happen, and it's going to shock a lot of people. And the answer to it is the heart. And people are going to really seek out this material, along with other people who are also talking about the heart, Greg and Bruce Lipton and Dispenza and all them. And, you know, they're taking a lot of Drew's work and moving on with it, thank God, because it would have just died out, you know. And but the answer to our problem is the heart. There is no debate, I don't think. It's just trying to understand what that really even means, and getting a society that's so wrapped up in this, which is external from us, right? We're giving our power over to it, and learning to go back inward and get into the heart. I recommend to you, I haven't done it yet. Maybe you and I can go and get a group to go, but I want to do the dark room. I think that would be
Oh yeah, I would love to do that. 5 days or
7 or 10.
7?
Yeah, I think it used to be 11, and I think they knocked it down to 9 at this point. But it's something that's on my bucket list. It's one of those things that
And Montachias or in the States?
I think they're in 2 places. Jasmine Heem, there's a place in South America, I believe, would be closest, at least to me. But there's one, I think, in Asia too, is where she originally was set up. But I believe if we could start getting a lot of people into that process, it would help shut a lot of this all off, you know.
Right. Absolutely, great point. I mean, it will require some very good meditators, let's put it that way. People that are used to, they have a ready and steady, strong, long-term practice. But yeah, that's an amazing process. I would love to organize and work with you on that one.
Cool.
And for those of you that don't know what we were talking about, it's a 7-day retreat in a dark room where there is only inner experience, and we are the students or the participants are guided in through the process, and as described by different teachers. In this case, I was referring to Mantak Chia, the author of multiple books on energy and prana, and I'll put all the details about his books in the references here, and you can see his work on the black room done, I believe, around Bangkok in Thailand or in Asia somewhere.
Correct. Yeah, and Jasmine Heem is she's one of the main facilitators for this too.
Yes, and that is in South America.
Yeah, but she's also the one in Bangkok too. I think maybe she works with Mantak Chia. I'm not sure how that all works out. I'm not sure.
Yeah. I'm not either, but I'll definitely put details inside, and people can reference to that.
I know Sandra Sacco. Sandra, I'm probably killing her last name. Sorry, Sandra. I love her. She's one of my favorite ATIH teachers. She's been through the process. So if she's on your list, make sure you drill her on that one.
Yeah, nice. I will definitely. And you know what? I want to just drop a little reference, historical. I think the tradition of the black room, which is basically a cave, it's in every tradition, in every religion. Well, not religion, just let's talk about traditions. It goes through the Hindu tradition, the Himalayan tradition, the Tibetan tradition, even the Maori. Even the Maori had this going into the cave for 7 days, meditating, praying to higher spirits to get messages, or whenever there was problem in the village, they would send, you know, sometimes the chief, sometimes the priest would go to the cave with provision or taken care of and come back with answers for the whole community. It's very, very fascinating, ancient rooted tradition.
Yeah, Drunvalo brings up the example of the Kogis. Same thing.
American Indians.
Yeah.
Yeah.
South America.
Yeah, brilliant. So I'm going to jump into another question, and we're going into the more fringe questions that I wanted to hear your experience on, and primarily about Egypt and the Sphinx, and what is there, what was there, what about the Hall of Amenti, what do you know, what your opinion is. We're not talking about experience anymore, just feel free to say anything you think or want to share with the rest of the community.
You know, I honestly don't have any direct experience. I've never been there, but it's on the bucket list. I'd love to get there. I know, like, there's other teachers, Luca, he's there often.
Mm-hmm.
Just other than what I've read, what Drew talked about, I'm very drawn to Egyptian. I have a lot of Egyptian things. There's something about that culture that is fascinating to me.
Mm-hmm.
But I have no direct experience with it, and sadly to say.
I appreciate your honesty, mate. Thanks. So next would be inner Earth and hollow Earth and inhabitants of these spaces and the plasma beings that Drew mentions a couple of times. If you want, drop anything that you think or have experienced or you want to share about.
Well, back after the first Flower of Life workshop, I attended the spiritual grandmother I mentioned, Noku Kanye. She was deeply involved with the I Am presence of Saint Germain.
Okay.
And so I jumped on
Ascended Masters.
Yeah, the Ascended Master Saint Germain. And so there was a lot going on in the Mount Shasta, and also in the inner Earth in Agatha, and what was going on there. And so I did a lot of that study with the Saint Germain and was fascinated with all that. And I do believe there's an inner Earth. I do believe that there's life in the inner Earth. You and I were talking earlier. I've spent direct time with Corey Good, with his experiences with things. But the plasma beings, other than the videos and the images I've seen of the ships, which are fascinating, I've never really had it. Even though we've done meditation with Drew, I've never really had a direct experience with the plasma beings. I'm very enamored. I'm curious. I have had experiences of my own of inner Earth, being in crystal cities, walking around and seeing crystals everywhere. And I've had direct experiences with Drew where he brought in the Kogis and we were in meditation, and I felt the presence of the room just fill up. And I felt someone walk by me, and then people were having all these experiences. I didn't know what was going on until people started talking, and Drew's like, well, the Kogis entered the room. And I felt that. I really did feel that. That was a fascinating experience. But as far as the plasma beings, I have not had that experience directly. But at this point, I'm in full belief that they exist, other than seeing the video, because I've seen a lot of other stuff on my own. And I know life is teeming on multiple levels of vibratory levels here, you know,
We can call it dimensions.
On vibratory dimensions, right? So you got inner and outer, and it's like a piano. It's like we're on one piano key, you know. And I had been grateful to experience a few different piano keys, you know, maybe 3 or 4 other ones. And so I know that there's, you know, if those exist, there's got to be others. You know, it only makes logical sense. And I've had tons of experiences with orbs. I was really into orbs back in the earlier days, 2003, 4, 5. to the point where I was talking with one of the top curators in Philadelphia of art, and I was trying to put together a show and show these orbs because I had them on video and stuff. I mean, you know, during our workshops, I'll start filming and there ain't nothing there, maybe one or two, and then we start meditating. It's like they come flooding in like it's snowing. And it is really cool to see. I mean, I remember in earlier stages, I was filming and people are meditating, and one came at me and I actually ducked. I'm like, what am I ducking for? You know, it's like, but it literally was like, whoa, you know, it's like, and I'm like, what am I ducking for? You know, so it was that real for me. You want to talk about experiences of that, you know, and so I've had a gazillion photos and things of that, to the point where it's become redundant now. I don't only when I'm back in workshops and people are taking pictures and they bring it up, and the excitement, you know, the people are like kids when they first see this stuff, and I'm like, oh yeah, they're orbs, you know. And it's the same with UFOs too. I've if anyone listening wants to go see a UFO, here's a trick. Get your hands on a really good night vision goggles. Or a high-powered night vision scope, like a hunting scope, and start staring at the night, like gotta be in pitch dark, you know, it's because it's night vision, and start staring up at the sky, and you'll start noticing things flying all over the place with night vision. It's a lot of fun. We used to spend nights and nights and nights, a bunch of us getting together. I'd plug it into my laptop so you don't have to keep looking at the thing, and just, you know, and stick it on a tripod and just direct it in a certain area and sit back and watch. And you just watch these things pass through it and stuff. And yeah, every once in a while you get a satellite, but oftentimes you get things doing crazy stuff. And then we get our laser pens and we'd shine up at them and stuff like that. And we would get into our Merkaba field and start trying to communicate and stuff like this nature. You got to watch who you're talking to, but you know, you put your fields up, you ask for protection. You ask that, you know, only those benevolent beings that are willing to talk, yada, yada, you know, there's a lot of respect here, you know, don't get me wrong. But it's easy to do if you've never seen a UFO before to get some, or just type in night vision on YouTube and you'll see a gazillion videos.
Options. Well, I'm glad I asked you that question. Thank you for sharing this trick. There's actually, for those of you that are interested on the subject, a lot of applications available online. One of the major proponent of communication with aliens is Dr. Greer with his CE5 protocols.
I've done it.
Fascinating bunch of material. I mean, the amount of recordings and photos that he's collected through the years is mind-blowing.
I used to do, my first experiences was with Lisa Holt, the wife of Ron Holt. She did a lot of contact work, and I had some fascinating experiences with her. I think she actually helped open the garage door up to UFOs with me, because after my times with her, I'd have a lot of really fascinating experiences. My wife too, like, you know, but at this stage it's kind of redundant. It's like, who cares about that until we get our shit together, you know?
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, unless it's a CE5 and they're in front of you, you know, this thing they're moving around, it's okay. Right. I'm gonna jump into another question. This is a juicy one, which is rooted in millennia of belief systems. So I don't know if you had the experience, but let me know what you think. And the question is a little tricky as well. So I'll just leave it open-ended. I'm not going to interrupt it. So is the tunnel of light during the process of dying a trap? Are we recycled back into Earth through the atmosphere, into the moon and back to the atmosphere that way? What is your opinion?
I've read a lot about that. I don't know what to think, because I haven't had that, at least in my memory at this moment. We've all gone through death before. Yeah, I know all about that theory. I desire not to believe it, but I cannot not believe it. I have a friend actually who has died 3 times. and he has claimed to see the bright light. And but it wasn't long. He wasn't there long, but his share with me was that it felt good. So, you know, I desired, just in simple form, because I believe everything is just light, and because I believe that the universe is teeming in life. Yeah, there might have been something put here to entrap us, but I don't feel like that is the end result. I think if anything, there's an AI here or something that could be entrapping us. It could be entrapping the last century or the last 13,000 years of us when we had that crash. Yeah, maybe something was put in there.
The Atlantis crash.
Correct. Yeah, with the abuse of technology that was taking place. Mm-hmm. So I can get on to that conversation of belief, but I believe that we are a droplet, part of the creator. We're a seed that contains the whole of the universe. I do believe that, and I've had experiences to show me that. So yeah, I think it's both. Do I believe that there's a flat earth? No, unless you're looking at it from a 2D perspective. Yeah. But not from my perspective. So, I think it's a lot of perception and things put into all this.
Yeah, that's overall, I dropped this question for multiple reasons. First of all, I'm researching on it and I want to hear your opinion. And I've asked a similar question to all of your colleagues in the ATIH community, but I also ask it as a matter of understanding belief systems, because it's one of those things that, how many people on the planet right now can say they died and they came back? 0.01%. So the amount of knowledge and experience that any standard human being can have on the subject is like minimal. Those that go and experience it are not ready to talk about it. And I mean, I didn't mean to say ready. They're not capable to come back and talk about it. And so that's where we only know that is a certainty. And so and we also know by experience from parapsychology and psychologists that went into hypnosis that what we believe is going to happen after is what manifests. And so it's a very, very controversial and delicate subject. We certainly don't want to believe that we're going to go to hell, because nobody wants to experience that. But at the same time, we don't want to believe that there is a tunnel and that's what everybody has to do. My personal opinion, and forgive me if I jump to my conclusions here, is that it's basically literally like waking up. You go to bed and you wake up and you're not as heavy as you experience usually. You're not through the physical vessel anymore. You're in your consciousness body or light body. I don't have a clear perception, but I do resonate very much with the stories of individuals that just described it from out-of-body experiences or from pre-death experiences as a standing up from a morning, a long night of sleep. The subject, though, it's to be really digged into is belief systems, because that is what's happening on a global scale right now. It's our biggest Pandora box. It's like what we believe, what we think is what we become. And that's the biggest weakness of and strength of human beings, because that's where the manipulation lies. Everything that we are taught to believe, it's what we think. And as we think, we become, hence the reality we live in. So that's where I think every individual, through tools like the ATIH and the Flower of Life and any other modality that really puts them in touch with their own heart, and I mean your emotions and your intuitions and your mind, your capacity to logically understand and articulate what you live, can actually think with their own mind rather than just digest and drink everything that they're told.
Yep, I agree 100%. we talked about it earlier about the whole AI situation, and you know, you have certain aspects that are controlling the data for which we receive, and they know our ability, so they need to project at us a specific storyline, because they know that our belief is going to co-create it, right, like you mentioned. And so we're here, I feel like we're stuck in the wheel, you know, like that mouse in the wheel kind of thing. And again, learning about your own technology and learning how to go within yourself, I feel like you can easily shatter a lot of that. I got rid of cable TV in 2005. I've had enough. You know, I saw then the amount of lies that were coming and stuff, you know. So when we hear things like fake news, like that's an old term to me. Like that term's been around for 20, 25 years, you know.
Right.
It's just finally people are starting to talk about, because certain other people talked about it, you know.
Right.
And yeah, I think that, you know, again, I believe something is coming that's very special, and it's like God is intervening directly. And I believe that it's going to shake the construct of the power systems and free, like it's going to be really like it's going to be getting out of prison. I used to hear Drunvalo talk about this in the late 90s.
Nice.
Yeah, Through the Eyes of a Child was a big video he put out in 99. I didn't watch it until like maybe 2001 or something, but everything he was talking about then is really going on right now, you know, with the changing of the patterns of the sun and things of this nature. It's yeah, right now is such an opportune time to just turn it all off while you're in quarantine and learn about yourself again.
And look inside.
Bingo. Yeah.
Absolutely. I so agree with you. It's really a time for everyone to really find what's inside and clean up. It's house maintenance and clean up right now. It's almost forced if you think about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually, this past year, this quarantining and all this kind of things, I loved it. Because we had just moved and we're in the woods. I can barely see my neighbors, you know. And so it was really, and I was getting paid to be home from you know, unemployment. And so it gave me a year to play with my kids and just do things around the house, and it's been awesome, you know. And I've been in the city twice in the last 13 months, and it's so depressing. As soon as I get in there, I turn around and come right back out, you know, because people are so inundated with that false, constant news, no matter where you go, what store you're in, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, wow, it's insane. And some of the things that they say is like, wow, how could you even believe half of this stuff? It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, Ron, it was a super pleasure talking to you. We've been talking for 3 hours and a half. This interview has gone a little over. I definitely am not going to edit anything. But this is your opportunity. Please tell us what is your website? What are you doing next? You mentioned the ATIH May. Tell us what other practices and courses you're offering, all of your services, please.
Yeah, well, I mentioned to you earlier that I'm working with a group of friends to launch a website. It's called 11.
Nice.
And it will be an app. And we're being called the Airbnb of holistic health. So no matter where you are in the world, if I went to Italy and I got off the plane and sprained my ankle and I want to get some acupuncture done, I can access the app and find an acupuncturist within a 5-mile radius. At the moment, we have 206 different therapies vetted out. I was brought on to this because of my networking that I have going on in the city. But part of my reasoning to be with this company is to provide a platform for ATIH teachers and for many teachers out in the world who need a voice, who need to get out there. You know, one of the things that is a little bit unsettling is that there seems to be just a few teachers at the top that seem to make all the money and they get all the publicity. Meanwhile, there's so many others that really could use the help. And I always said, if those people at the top, why aren't you helping your fellow teachers? You know, I mean, this is a body of work that needs to be shared, and not just by 4 people. And so we're trying to create this platform for holistic health across the board. But of course, for me, because of my work with the Heart and Drew, I'm going to provide a really strong platform for the ATIH teachers, and many of the teachers, like Michelle Paccio. She teaches breath work, which I hosted one of her courses, and profoundly affected me. It was an incredible, very powerful work of breath. It's very similar to Wim Hof, but it's not Wim Hof. It's Dan Burrow's work. I might be pronouncing that last name wrong, but Michelle is a phenomenal facilitator in breath work. And I bring that up because many facilitators who are involved with Drunvalo's work, they also are doing their own things that led them into Drew's work. And I desire to spotlight these people. You know, they need to be heard.
And we need a one-stop shop right now. I mean, people need to find a reliable one place where they can have access to all these alternative holistic offerings, and not just not just trainings and courses, but also direct hands-on healing modalities.
Absolutely. And again, so our goal is to become the largest database in holistic health. And so you'll be able to come into our site, and it'll be like very similar to like a Facebook/LinkedIn. You know, we're trying to take the best of all that stuff. And we'll be headlining like therapies of the month, whether it's reverse speech, what I shared with you earlier, something like that, you know, because there's a lot of therapies out there that need to be headlined and are not talked about yet, you know. And so that's a big part of what I've been doing. It means a lot to me to help launch this company there. And I'm working with all local people. I found this house because I've been driving up here to work with some of the key people in this movement. And there's about 15 of us right now that are seriously working on it. And we've been having some issues here and there, but I'm hoping by this summer, fall-ish, we might be able to finally launch. So that's a big part of it. I am getting back on the saddle again, like I mentioned, with my first ATIH workshop in a while, coming in May. That's being held here in Pennsylvania. My website, which needs to be updated, needs a little bit of work. And I think I'm just going to blow it up and start all over and put a new one up because it's been there for like 15 years. You know, it's like so outdated. But anyway, my website is my name, ronserchie.com. The last name is Serchie. So it's RON, Ron, and then Serchie. It's just one whole word, ronserchie.com. You'll find my website there. And that's, you know, and then other than that, a lot of the work I do with my wife with the children and trying to bring people aware of what's going on. There's Reiki. Well, I do still teach Reiki. Yes, I haven't done that also in like 2 years. So I actually teach for a major school here in Philadelphia. It's a huge corporation. They got schools all over the country. But I'm a board certificated member, and so I can give continued ed to like nurses and stuff like that with Reiki. And I am excited about the Reiki field because I've taught many nurses that are in major hospitals in Philadelphia. And they often will come back to me for anxiety reasons and stuff like that. They don't want to take the medication. Right. And then one of the things I do want to plug is that there's a new film coming out about the children. You can see the trailer right now. It's called The Freedom of Sound, or The Sound of Freedom. I'm sorry, The Sound of Freedom. And it's needed. There's other films that have been put out, but this film really lays out the numbers. And I think people need to hear the numbers, because we were losing up to 800,000 children in the United States per year before the Trump administration came in. And then they knocked that down to half. And we were fighting for decades to get somebody to get involved. And thank God he got involved immediately. but that's 2 million children a year globally that go missing. So to me, that's
sound of light,
the sound of freedom.
soundoffreedom.com.
The Sound of Freedom. Go to YouTube and look up The Sound of Freedom. You can watch the trailer. Yeah.
Put it underneath here.
Yeah, and it's going to be very impactful. I think it's going to be a series of other ones that are coming out after that, because once you realize that the leaders you're voting for are torturing children, how are we going to spiritually move forward? And I've been saying this for 20 years.
Right.
You know, and now, and not me. I mean, there's a Kathy O'Brien who I told you I met a long time ago, who really opened my eyes up and stuff like that. But to me, the crux that stops the spiritual evolvement is torturing the children behind the scenes. And so we need to spotlight that. We need to stop it, because you can't torture your offspring. How are you supposed to spiritually move forward when you're torturing your offspring? Right. It's so opposite of what I can really comprehend. But yeah, so that's about it. And I'm very fortunate to be a part of Drunvalo's work. He's changed my life. I love the guy. I do refer to him as the metaphysical godfather. Drunvalo to me in the late 80s and throughout the 90s turned over all the big rocks and led you down the path of sacred geometry, led you down the path of the light body, led you down the path of ancient sites and ley lines and things of this nature, you know, brought in the ET stuff. And, you know, so I love the guy for that reason. And he always referenced other people's work. It wasn't about Drew and him, and, you know, it was about what Drew had learned and who his teachers were. And I always valued that about him.
All right. Thank you for that, Ron. You guys, thank you for joining us on this amazing interview. It's been a long afternoon for me and Ron of chats and discussions. And please have a reference to everything that we talked about in the description section. Like this video if you did. And if you want to see more, please subscribe. It's going to help us big time to produce more. In the meantime, until the next interview, have a lovely evening, day, or night, wherever it is, and take care. See you soon. Bye-bye.